Awesome. Thanks for having us today. My name is Elise Roberts. I am the regional organizer for Witness for Peace. For those of you who aren't familiar with our work, we are a nonprofit that was founded in the 80s during the Contra War, based on wanting U.S. citizens to understand the negative effects of U.S. policy in Nicaragua and how U.S. policy was leading to violence and war there. And our roots were in peaceful accompaniment, so we realized that when we took people down to Latin America to learn about U.S. policies there, that even just their presence was bringing a break in conflict or a break in the violence. We still do some of that work, especially in Colombia and Honduras, but our work has expanded to talk about all kinds of ways that U.S. policy affects people in Latin America. So we focus on issues of migration and immigration. We focus on trade, especially free trade agreements. We focus on aid, all kinds of like debt relief, and especially military aid. So it's basically about how our U.S. governmental policies and U.S. corporate practices lead to poverty, corruption, and human rights violations in Latin America. We bring in expert speakers like we're doing today. Nancy Garcia is here from Oaxaca. And we also take teams of delegates down to Latin America to see with their own eyes the effects of U.S. policy. While I'm talking about the delegations really briefly, I'm going to pass around a little flyer for a delegation that's coming up. It's over January, and it's based on free trade and the roots of migration. So it's based for college students, and it's during your college break. And so there are options for credit, and it's basically meant to go down, you visit free trade zones, you learn, you live with and learn from communities that have had a lot of out-migration, where a lot of their family members have migrated to the States. And you learn about kind of alternative trade models. You go and visit fair trade cooperatives and other types of systems of trade. All of this work, both having speakers and taking delegations, is tied to our main goal, which is to change U.S. policy and to change U.S. corporate practices to lead to more peaceful, just, and sustainable economies in the whole hemisphere, in the Americas. I'm going to hand it off to Moravia. Moravia is here from our Mexico team. We have teams, full-time teams in Mexico, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Cuba. And so she works on the ground in Mexico and can tell us a little bit more about the issues that they're focused on there. I am going to pass around a list for you to sign up to get our emails as well. And just so you know, we don't send a ton of emails. It's just kind of quarterly and when we really need action so that you can know when we're coming around doing events here in Wisconsin. So pass that time.
Hi folks, thanks so much for coming today. My name is Moravia de la O, and I'm a member of the Mexico team. It's part of Witness for Peace. There's a 4-person team that has been there since, we've been in Oaxaca since 2005 and in Mexico since 1999. We work with our partners on the ground and keep our ear to the ground to see what sort of trends we're seeing in Mexico and how people are being directly affected by U.S. policy, as Elise said. We also send that information here back to the U.S. Through various media, videos, newspaper articles, op-eds, etc., to inform our grassroots base about what issues are affecting Mexican citizens and how the U.S. Is affecting them, what the U.S. policy tie is. And we also accompany delegations, the delegation that Elise talked about to Nicaragua. We do that too on the ground in Mexico, plan and lead these delegations in Oaxaca mostly. And another of our tasks is to, as members of the team, is to accompany our speakers on speakers tours as interpreters. So this is what I've been doing for the last month, and we have the pleasure of having Nancy Garcia from the Center for the Orientation of Migrants of Oaxaca. It's an organization that we have been working with and partnered with for a very long time in Oaxaca, and as part of our program area, looking at why people migrate out of Oaxaca specifically, but Mexico more generally, we work with a number of other organizations that also are working with communities that are being directly affected by the migration phenomenon in the area. But it's really neat to get to share our work in the U.S. with our speakers, and also for them to share their analysis with people in the States. As I said, we look at, and as Elise mentioned, we work a lot on issues of migration, and specifically looking at what U.S. policies are pushing people off of their land and to migrate. And we also are looking more and more at how the current drug war in Mexico is playing out and what the effects are for everyday people. And just a quick little bit of context in terms of how U.S. policy is tied to what Nancy's going to be speaking about. Since 1984, with the passage of the North America Free Trade Agreements, we've seen a dramatic increase in migration out of Mexico, and in the last 10 years, increasingly higher rates of migration out of southern states like Oaxaca. So in Oaxaca, which is primarily a rural, based on rural, or on farming, and its economy is based on farming. The implications of NAFTA were pretty devastating to the rural sector in Mexico, and as a result, between 2 and 3 million jobs have been lost in this sector in all of Mexico. But states whose economy is based primarily on subsistence farming, like Oaxaca, have been hit pretty badly by this by NAFTA and policies like it. Similar phenomenon has happened in Central America since 2006 with the Central America Free Trade Agreement. We've seen increased numbers of unemployment, poverty rate going through the roof in El Salvador right now. The current statistics point to 50%, over 50% of the population of this country living in poverty. So that's just to give you a little bit of how the U.S. is involved in this phenomenon. But now I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, and she'll tell us more about what migrants face as they try to cross through Mexico on their way to the U.S.
Buenas tardes, yo soy Nancy García, soy defensora de los derechos de los migrantes en su tránsito por México. Yo trabajo en una organización que se llama Centro de Orientación del Migrante de Oaxaca.
Good afternoon, my name is Nancy Garcia. I'm a migrant rights defender. I work with migrants in transit as they make their way through Mexico, and I work with an organization called the Center for the Orientation of Migrants, or COMI, in Oaxaca.
Muchas gracias por dejarme compartir lo que los migrantes me han enseñado, ¿no? Cada vez que yo hablo de la experiencia de los migrantes, siempre me gusta comenzar con esta frase que dice: los migrantes no son una estadística, tienen rostro y dignidad. Desgraciadamente, muchas de las veces cuando hablamos de los migrantes hablamos en números, ¿no? Siempre hablamos en porcentajes, pero debemos darnos cuenta que ellos son seres humanos, ¿no? Son personas iguales a nosotros.
Thanks for letting me share a little bit of what I've learned from my work with migrants. Every time I talk about my experience with migrants, I like to start off with this quote. Migrants are not a statistic, they have faces and dignity. A lot of times, unfortunately, we only look at migrants, when talking about migrants, we only talk about numbers and percentages. And for me, I want to give a face or show migrants as human beings and as equal to us.
Bueno, dentro de este fenómeno de la migración, México juega un triple papel, ¿no? Uno, como país de expulsor de migrantes y de obra barata. Otro fenómeno que vive también México es como país de tránsito. La mayor parte o todos los migrantes centroamericanos van a cruzar México para llegar a Estados Unidos. Y otro nuevo fenómeno que estamos viviendo nosotros es el de país de retorno. Muchos migrantes que están siendo deportados después de muchos años de vivir en Estados Unidos.
Within the migration phenomenon that we see in Mexico, Mexico plays three different distinct roles in this phenomenon. The first is as a country of origin from which a lot of migrants leave to become cheap labor. The second is the second role that Mexico plays in this is as a place of, or country through which migrants transit. I would say most, if not all, Central American migrants cross through Mexico on their way to the U.S. And the third is as a country to which migrants return. More and more we've seen migrants deported, many times migrants who have spent entire lives or many years in the U.S.
Este tránsito que hacen los migrantes por México lo van a hacer en una extrema vulnerabilidad. No existe una ley que proteja los derechos de los migrantes. Las bandas de delincuencia organizada como autoridades violan los derechos de los migrantes. Los principales países que pasan por México o las personas migrantes que pasan por México van a ser personas de origen salvadoreño, de Guatemala, de Nicaragua, de Honduras, pero también pasan personas de Cuba, de Perú, de Costa Rica.
Migrants in transit, migrants cross transit through Mexico in a position of extreme vulnerability because there are no laws that protect the rights of migrants. They are particularly vulnerable to crimes perpetrated by organized criminal groups and as well as authorities who violate migrant rights as they cross through Mexico. The majority of people that we see crossing through come from the countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Honduras. But we also see people from Cuba, Peru, and Costa Rica.
Mayoritariamente pasan hombres, seguido de mujeres. Todos estos van a ser en edad productiva mayoritariamente. Y algo nuevo que estamos viendo es el paso de familias completas, ¿no? Ya no solamente migra el papá o la mamá, sino también ya traen a sus hijos con ellos.
Majority of the migrants that we see are men, but there's also a group of women that migrate as well. And most of them tend to be in productive or within the productive age in which they are productive in terms of labor. A new phenomenon that we've been seeing as well in recent months has been an increase in the numbers of entire families that are crossing through, not just the father anymore, not just the mother going by themselves, but bringing along their children.
Las principales razones por qué los migrantes salen de sus países de origen va a ser principalmente por la economía, empleos muy mal pagados o salarios muy bajos, por reunirse con la familia, por la violencia que existe en su país o por reunificación familiar también, muchas de las veces, o desastres naturales. Aunque en algunas ocasiones los migrantes tengan un terreno o tengan una casita, ha dejado de llover o llueve demasiado y los ríos se desbordan, entonces pierden todo lo que tienen, ¿no? La mayor parte de los migrantes que salen cuentan con redes de apoyo, personas que van a ayudar para poder llegar a Estados Unidos.
The main reasons for which migrants leave are economic. That is, they may have very low paid jobs or very low wages. Sometimes they may also leave to be reunited with family members or because of violence or natural disasters. In some cases, migrants will have land or a little house, but because there's not enough rain or there's too much rain, rivers may overflow and they can lose everything. Most migrants who come through Mexico have networks of help, people helping them on their way to the U.S.
Las principales entradas de los migrantes centroamericanos van a ser por el estado de Chiapas, por Tapachula, y en otras ocasiones otra entrada va a ser la de Tabasco en Tenosique, ¿no? Es la frontera de México con Guatemala.
The main entry points for Central American migrants into Mexico are through the states of Chiapas and the city of Tapachula. And in other cases, they may also come in through the state of Tabasco and Tenosique, which are both on the border between Mexico and Guatemala.
Uno de los principales transportes que va a ser utilizado por los migrantes centroamericanos, especialmente los más pobres, va a ser el tren. A lo largo del territorio mexicano, el tren va a tener su ruta, comenzando desde Chiapas. En San Luis Potosí se divide y uno va para Sonora y el otro va para Tamaulipas.
One of the main means of transportation used by Central American migrants, especially those that are the poorest, is the train. All along the Mexican territory, the train travels all along the Mexican territory, and once it reaches, starts in Chiapas, and when it reaches the state of San Luis Potosí, it divides up, and one goes to Sonora, and the other one goes to Tamaulipas.
La duración, el tiempo que va a llevar su recorrido por México va a depender de su economía. Algunos que tengan más recursos van a poder pagar un guía o un coyote, que va a ser más fácil su traslado por México. Estos coyotes o guías cuentan con redes de apoyo, entonces va a ser mucho más fácil que los migrantes con un guía puedan pasar por México. Los migrantes que menos recursos tienen van a tomar el tren. El tren no tiene horario de salida, son trenes de carga, entonces tienen que esperar 1, 2 o hasta una semana a esperar de que el tren salga, ¿no? Y esto va a depender de las autoridades que manejan el tren.
The length of time it takes to cross all of Mexico depends on each person's personal economy. That is, how much resources are available to them. People with more resources available to them will hire guides or coyotes, human smugglers, which will make the journey easier because coyotes have networks of support, so it's easier to cross Mexico. But those people with fewer resources will use the train. The train doesn't have a set schedule. These are cargo trains, so a lot of the times migrants will have to wait 1 or 2 days or even an entire week until the train departs. And this depends on the authorities in charge of the trains.
También a lo largo del territorio mexicano existen más de 50 estaciones migratorias que su trabajo es detener a los migrantes centroamericanos. También en contraste existen más de 50 casas del migrante en todo México. Estas casas del migrante son de la pastoral social de la Iglesia Católica. Es una apuesta de la Iglesia Católica para defender los derechos de los migrantes.
All along Mexico, there are over 50 migrant stations whose mission it is to detain Central American migrants. In contrast, there are over 50 migrant shelters in Mexico. These migrant shelters are a project of the social ministry, are part of the social ministry of the Catholic Church. They're an initiative of the Catholic Church to protect and defend the rights of migrants.
Estas casas del migrante van a estar ubicadas en las rutas principales de los migrantes, ¿no? Todas las casas del migrante somos una red en México y somos parte de la dimensión pastoral de la movilidad humana.
These migrant shelters are located along the main routes that migrants take. They form a network under the Ministry for Migrants and Human Mobility.
Dentro del grupo más vulnerable que hay dentro de la migración son las mujeres, los niños no acompañados, las personas adultas y los indígenas. Los niños y los indígenas y las personas de mayor edad no están considerados dentro de las estadísticas del Instituto Nacional de Migración. Es como si ellos no pasaran, pero nosotros nos damos cuenta que ellos están pasando, ¿no? No importa la edad que tengan, ellos van a seguir viniendo a Estados Unidos.
Some of the more vulnerable groups in this migration flow are women, children, especially unaccompanied minors, older adults, indigenous peoples. These last two groups are not counted within or included in the statistics that the National Institute of Migration of Mexico keeps. It's as if they didn't cross, but we know that they cross because it doesn't matter what age people are, they will continue coming through Mexico on their way to the U.S.
Los principales delitos que son cometidos en contra de los migrantes van a ser los robos, los secuestros principalmente, las extorsiones. Estos delitos van a ser cometidos principalmente por las bandas de delincuencia organizada, muchas veces en contubernio con las autoridades.
The main crimes perpetrated against migrants are theft, kidnapping, this is a main crime against migrants, extortion, and they'll be perpetrated by organized criminal groups, a lot of times in collusion with authorities.
Cada vez los delitos que se cometen en contra de los migrantes van creciendo. Me gustaría compartir con ustedes una experiencia que tuve con un migrante que a veces pensamos que las violaciones son únicamente para las mujeres.
A lot of, more and more we see criminal acts against migrants growing, or the numbers growing. I'd like to share with you an experience that I had with a migrant. A lot of the times we think rape is only happening to women.
Muchos de los migrantes que pasan no quieren subirse al tren porque piensan que probablemente los puedan secuestrar o que es complicado subirse al tren porque lo hacen cuando el tren está en movimiento. Y muchos de los migrantes caminan y rodean las garitas de migración o los retenes de migración que existen en México. Al rodearlos, estas garitas de migración encuentran también muchos peligros. Este es un hombre de Honduras que venía con su amigo y habían caminado para rodear la garita de migración.
Many migrants that cross are scared to use the train, to go on the train, because of the probability that they may be kidnapped. Also because it's complicated to get on the train. It's very difficult to get on the trains when it's moving. So a lot of the times they may walk, especially to avoid immigration checkpoints. But when they decide to walk and avoid immigration checkpoints, they will encounter many dangers. This particular man was from Honduras. He was traveling with a friend, and they had decided to walk to avoid an immigration checkpoint.
Estas bandas de delincuencia organizada saben, o bandas de delincuencia común saben que los migrantes van a rodear para no pasar enfrente de las garitas. Entonces, un grupo de delincuentes detuvo a estos dos migrantes que venían caminando. Por lo general, estas bandas de delincuencia les piden a los migrantes que se desnuden completamente para buscarles el dinero. Muchos de los migrantes se las han ingeniado para guardar su dinero en sus ropas. La ropa muchas veces en el cuello, en la cintura del pantalón, tiene dobles bordes, entonces le hacen un hoyito para poder guardar su dinero. O entre la suela del zapato y la plantilla meten dinero. Esto lo saben los delincuentes, entonces les piden a los migrantes que se desnuden totalmente para romper sus ropas.
Organized criminal groups know that migrants will walk to avoid checkpoints, immigration checkpoints. So a gang stopped these two migrants as they were walking and asked them or demanded that they take off all their clothes so that they could look through their clothes for money. A lot of migrants have developed an ingenious way of hiding their money in in their clothes, in the waistband of their clothes, or in the waistband of their clothes, we have in the doubling or the foldings of their clothes, they'll make a hole, a small hole, and hide the money in there. Or sometimes also hide money between the soles and inside the soles of their shoes, so that they won't be found. But migrants or organized criminal groups now know that migrants do this, so they ask them to take off all their clothes so that they can rip through their clothes and look for money.
Cuando yo recibí al migrante en la organización donde yo trabajo, yo lo notaba muy nervioso y él estaba contándome pues que le habían pedido que se desnudara, le revisaron sus ropas, en la ropa de su compañero no traía dinero, entonces comenzaron a golpearlo hasta matarlo. Pero para esto él seguía estando muy nervioso, seguía tocándose las manos y él traía mucho coraje. Entonces yo le preguntaba, bueno, ¿qué puedo hacer por ti? Dime, ¿qué te pasa? Y él me dijo, es que aparte que mataron a mi amigo, me violaron, siendo él un hombre, ¿no? Entonces él estaba tan enojado, tenía tanto coraje, que él me dijo, yo le propuse que hiciéramos una denuncia. Él me dijo, no, yo me voy a trabajar a Estados Unidos, voy a juntar mucho dinero y voy a regresar al mismo lugar donde me violaron. En la cara de este hombre nunca se me va a olvidar, voy a regresar y voy a matarlo.
When this migrant arrived at the organization I work with, I noticed that he was very nervous. So he was telling me how these criminals asked him to take off his clothes and were searching for money in his clothes, but his friend, they didn't find any money in his friend's clothes. So they started to beat him up until they killed him.
See with their own eyes the effects of U.S. policy. Well, I'm talking about the delegations really briefly. I'm going to pass around a little flyer for a delegation that's coming up. It's over January, and it's based on free trade and the roots of migration. So it's based for college students, and it's during your college break. And so there are options for credit, and it's basically meant to go down, you visit free trade zones, you learn, you live with and learn from communities that have had a lot of out-migration, where a lot of their family members have migrated to the States. And you learn about kind of alternative trade models. You go and visit fair trade cooperatives and other types of systems of trade. All of this work, both having speakers and taking delegations, is tied to our main goal, which is to change U.S. policy and to change U.S. corporate practices to lead to more peaceful, just, and sustainable economies in the whole hemisphere, in the Americas. I'm going to hand it off to Moravia. Moravia is here from our Mexico team. We have teams, full-time teams in Mexico, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Cuba. And so she works on the ground in Mexico and can tell us a little bit more about the issues that they're focused on there. I am going to pass around a list for you to sign up to get our emails as well. And just so you know, we don't send a ton of emails. It's just kind of quarterly and when we really need action, so that you can know when we're coming around doing events here in Wisconsin. So pass that.
Hi folks, thanks so much for
coming. It's expanded to talk about all kinds of ways that U.S. policy affects people in Latin America. So we focus on issues of migration and immigration. We focus on trade, especially free trade agreements. We focus on aid, all kinds of like debt relief, and especially military aid. So it's basically about how our U.S. governmental policies and U.S. corporate practices lead to poverty, corruption, and human rights violations in Latin America. We bring in expert speakers like we're doing today. Nancy Garcia is here from Oaxaca. And we also take teams of delegates down to Latin America. Awesome. Thanks for having us today. My name is Elise Roberts. I am the regional organizer for Witness for Peace. For those of you who aren't familiar with our work, we are a nonprofit that was founded in the 80s during the Contra War, based on wanting U.S. citizens to understand the negative effects of U.S. policy in Nicaragua and how U.S. policy was leading to violence and war there. And our roots were in peaceful accompaniment, so we realized that we took people down to Latin America to learn about U.S. policies there, that even just their presence was bringing a break in conflict or a break in the violence. We still do some of that work, especially in Colombia and Honduras.
Coming today, my name is Moravia de la O, and I'm a member of the Mexico team as part of Witness for Peace. There's a 4-person team that has been there since, we've been in Oaxaca since 2005 and in Mexico since 1999. We work with our partners on the ground and keep our ear to the ground to see what sort of trends we're seeing in Mexico and how people are being directly affected by U.S. policy, as Elise said. We also send that information here back to the U.S. Through various media, videos, newspaper articles, op-eds, etc., to inform our grassroots base about what issues are affecting Mexican citizens.